Hello, welcome again to Peppermint Wednesday. My name is Peter Roper, known as the Family Businessman, and welcome to Peppermint Wednesday, which is my weekly video blog answering questions that I've been given by clients about family business. And I'm doing a lot about ownership in the recent clips and talking about shares and share ownership. Here's a simple question, but not necessarily a simple answer. Who do shares pass on to? This is a minefield. I know from personal experience this can be extremely challenging, especially if it's not been thought through. You see, who do you pass your shares on to when, for whatever reason, your shares move on? Let's say, unfortunately, you've passed away and your shares move on to somebody else. All right, and you're thinking about things in that way and you think, right, okay, who should those shares pass on to? Do they pass back to the rest of the shareholders in equal amounts or unequal amounts? Do they get handed down to your partner, your spouse, your husband, your wife? Well, although you might not be fussed about that, they might be. They might not want ownership of those shares. They might have no interest in them whatsoever. It might be that the other family members will say, well, no, actually, we don't want your spouse to be a part of this business for whatever reason. So it's an awkward situation, isn't it, really? Especially if that spouse decides that actually there's a bit of money to be made for it. Perhaps the families haven't quite gotten as well as they perhaps could have done. So all of a sudden, could they sell those shares to somebody else that's completely outside of the business? I've been involved in that several times, where shares have been passed on to a spouse who's immediately sold them to somebody who happens to be competitive to that family business, and all of a sudden have got a major say in the running of that business. All of a sudden, that family business is in deep trouble. So who else do you pass it on to? What about step families? What about, stepfather, stepmother, stepchildren, etc.? All of a sudden, if it goes through them, it could go to somebody so totally disconnected from the family. There's no obvious connections to anybody, yet all of a sudden they've got a major interest in your business. I don't think most family businesses ever want this process, but what I do know is that an awful lot of them don't think it through, and the reason for it is because it started probably as a very small business and has expanded and grown over a period of time. Perhaps it's very successful, it's grown into a business this big as opposed to this big. Not that there's anything wrong with either, but it's got this big, and then all of a sudden there are very significant sums of money involved, and it's amazing how businesses all of a sudden suddenly look very, very different to people. So sort out the share process. Again, before you talk, preferably to your advisors, to professional people, because they're going to ask you these questions. You need to have thought it through beforehand and the consequences of your actions. So that's it. Think through about who do shares pass on to. Think about it now. Don't think about it in 10 years' time. It'll be too late. You need to think about it now. So get on social media, send me an email, I always answer them personally. Let's talk about share options. Let's talk about the good and the not so good that perhaps that you have endured during the course of your family business, and let's see how we can help each other. But for now, my name is Peter Roper. This has been Peppermint Wednesday, and as the family businessman, I'd just say one thing to you, which is if I can help you in any way, just let me know. Thanks for listening.